The massive ship Stellar Harmony floated through space like a floating city. Its metal walls stretched for miles, filled with thousands of beings from 12 different worlds. Bright lights lined the corridors and the hum of engines created a steady background noise that never stopped. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison walked down the main hallway, his black uniform crisp and clean. His hand rested on the weapon at his side as he watched the crowds of strange creatures moving around. Some had blue skin and 3 eyes. Others had fur covering their bodies. A few floated in the air using invisible forces. Jake had been in space for 5 years, but he still felt amazed by all the different life forms. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council recently, and humans were still the new kids in this cosmic neighborhood. "Jake, stay close," said Ambassador Lisa Carter as she walked beside him. She was a tall woman with gray hair and smart eyes. Behind her came Amy Brooks, a young woman with brown hair who worked as a cultural expert. Amy always carried a small computer pad where she took notes about alien customs. The 3 humans made their way toward the grand ballroom. Tonight was the big diplomatic party before the trade meeting started tomorrow. Representatives from all 12 species would be there, trying to make deals and form alliances. "Remember," Lisa said quietly, "we need to be careful tonight. Not everyone is happy that humans got a seat at the trade table so quickly." Amy nodded and adjusted her blue dress. She had studied alien cultures for years, but this was her first big diplomatic event. Her job was to help prevent any cultural mistakes that might offend their new alien friends. The ballroom doors opened with a soft whoosh. Inside, the room was enormous, with a clear dome ceiling that showed the stars outside. Floating lights danced in the air like fireflies, and soft music played from hidden speakers. Hundreds of alien beings filled the space, talking in groups and sampling food from different worlds. Jake spotted the Zephyrians immediately. They stood in one corner of the room, tall and intimidating. Their skin looked like green leather, and sharp claws extended from their fingers. Each one wore military decorations on their chest. They were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors who valued strength above all else. "There's Vexstar Bloodclaw," Amy whispered, pointing toward the largest Zephyrian. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with scars covering his arms and face. His yellow eyes scanned the room like a predator looking for prey. Vexstar belonged to one of the most powerful Zephyrian families. His clan had conquered 3 star systems and commanded respect through fear. He wore more military medals than any other Zephyrian in the room, and his presence made smaller aliens step away nervously. The humans moved through the crowd, greeting other diplomats and trying to build friendships. Lisa talked with the peaceful Altherans, who looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin. Amy chatted with some Corellian traders who resembled walking cats with purple fur. Everything went well for the first hour. The humans ate strange foods, listened to alien music, and learned about different cultures. Jake started to relax, thinking maybe tonight would pass without any problems. Then the Zephyrian delegation approached. Vexstar walked straight toward Lisa, his heavy boots making loud sounds on the floor. Other aliens quickly moved out of his way. His yellow eyes focused on the human ambassador with obvious dislike. "Ambassador Carter," Vexstar said in a deep, rough voice. "We need to discuss the trade proposal," Lisa smiled politely. "Of course." "Vexstar, what would you like to discuss?" "Your people rejected our offer for agricultural rights on your farming worlds," Vexstar growled. "This insults the Zephyrian Empire." Jake stepped closer, ready to protect Lisa if needed. He knew that Zephyrians sometimes use violence to solve disagreements. "We appreciate your interest," Lisa said calmly, "but humans prefer to keep control of their food production. We're happy to trade our surplus crops, but we won't lease our farmland." Vexstar's claws clicked together angrily. "Humans are new, too. This galaxy. You should accept guidance from older, stronger species." "We respect Zephyrian achievements," Lisa replied, "but every species has the right to make their own choices." The conversation attracted attention from other aliens nearby. They stopped their own discussions to watch the growing tension between humans and Zephyrians. Vexstar's breathing became heavier. He had been drinking fermented cathara root, a strong Zephyrian alcohol that made warriors more aggressive. The rejection of his proposal felt like a personal insult, especially coming from what he considered a weak species. "Your species thinks it's special," Vexstar snarled. "5 years in space and already you act like you belong here." Amy stepped forward, trying to help. She had studied Zephyrian culture and knew that showing respect for their warrior traditions might calm the situation. "Honorable Vexstar," she said, using the formal Zephyrian greeting, "humans greatly respect Zephyrian strength and military skill. We hope our species can find ways to work together that benefit both our people." But Vexstar was too angry to listen to diplomatic words. He saw Amy as another example of human arrogance, a young female from a weak species trying to tell him what to do. "Respect?" he roared. "You know nothing about respect." The music stopped. Conversations died. Every being in the ballroom turned to watch the confrontation. Jake's hand moved closer to his weapon, but he knew that drawing it would cause an interstellar incident. Vexstar took another step toward Amy. His massive frame towered over her small form. "I will show you what respect means." Amy tried to back away, but she bumped into a serving table behind her. Plates and glasses clattered to the floor. Fear filled her eyes as the huge warrior moved closer. "Vexstar, please," Lisa said, trying to intervene. "Let's discuss this calmly." But the Zephyrian was beyond reason. Years of military training and cultural programming told him that weakness must be punished. In his mind, humans had shown weakness by rejecting Zephyrian strength, and now he would demonstrate the consequences. The ballroom fell completely silent. Even the floating lights seemed to dim as tension filled the air. Diplomats from other species watched nervously. Knowing that what happened next could affect relations between multiple worlds, Vexstar raised his clawed hand high in the air. His yellow eyes blazed with anger and alcohol-fueled rage. In Zephyrian culture, physical dominance proved superiority. He intended to grab the human female and drag her away, showing everyone that Zephyrians commanded respect through strength. Amy pressed herself against the serving table, trapped with nowhere to run. Jake started to move forward, but he was too far away to reach her in time. Lisa called out a warning, but her words seemed to come in slow motion. Vexstar's clawed hand descended toward Amy's arm. His sharp talons gleamed under the ballroom lights. Time seemed frozen as hundreds of alien eyes watched the moment that would change everything. The warrior's claws made contact with Amy's bare skin instantly. Vexstar's expression changed from anger to confusion. His yellow eyes widened in shock. A strange sensation spread through his body, unlike anything he had ever experienced in decades of warfare and conquest. For the first time in his life, the mighty Zephyrian warrior felt something that his species had no name for, the overwhelming flood of another being's emotions flowing directly into his mind. Amy's fear, confusion, and pain hit him like a physical blow. But mixed with those feelings came something else: compassion, hope, and a desperate desire for understanding rather than conflict. Vexstar staggered backward, his claws releasing Amy's arm. His breathing became rapid and shallow. The most feared warrior in the Zephyrian fleet stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, staring at his own clawed hand as if it had betrayed him. The silence stretched on for long seconds. Then whispers began to spread through the crowd as aliens witnessed something that had never happened before in recorded galactic history. Vexstar Bloodclaw, destroyer of worlds and terror of 3 star systems, looked at the small human woman with what could only be described as regret. Vexstar stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, staring at his clawed hand. The strange feelings rushing through his body made no sense. His warrior training had prepared him for pain, fear, and anger, but this was something completely different. Amy rubbed her arm where his claws had touched her skin. Small red marks showed where his talons had pressed against her, but she felt more confused than hurt. Something had passed between them in that moment of contact, something that left her feeling dizzy and strange. Jake quickly moved to Amy's side, his hand still near his weapon. "Are you okay?" he asked, checking her arm for serious injury. I think so, Amy whispered, but her voice shook slightly. She kept looking at Vexstar, who continued to stand motionless like a statue. The other aliens in the ballroom began to whisper among themselves. Many had never seen a Zephyrian warrior show any emotion except anger or pride. Vexstar's current state of confusion and apparent distress was completely unprecedented. Ambassador Lisa Carter approached carefully, not wanting to make the situation worse. Vexstar, are you feeling well? The massive warrior turned his yellow eyes toward her. But they looked different now. Instead of the usual cold anger, there was something almost human in his expression, uncertainty, perhaps even vulnerability. I don't understand, Vexstar said slowly. His deep voice carried none of its previous threatening tone. What did she do to me? I didn't do anything, Amy said softly. I just when you touched me I felt something too. Dr. Nathan Kelly had been standing near the refreshment table when the incident occurred. As the ship's chief medical officer and expert on alien biology, he recognized that something unusual had happened. He pulled out his portable bioscanner and approached the group. May I? Dr. Kelly asked, holding up his scanner. I'd like to check both of you for any medical issues. Vexstar nodded weakly, which surprised everyone. Zephyrian warriors typically refused any form of medical assistance, considering it a sign of weakness. The scanner hummed quietly as Dr. Kelly pointed it first at Amy, then at Vexstar. His eyes widened as he read the results on the small screen. This is remarkable, he muttered, taking more detailed readings. Amy, your brain is showing extremely high levels of neurochemical activity. And Vexstar, your neural patterns are completely different from normal Zephyrian readings. What does that mean? Jake asked, keeping his voice low to avoid attracting more attention from the growing crowd of onlookers. I'm not entirely sure yet, Dr. Kelly admitted. But it appears that some kind of neurological exchange occurred when physical contact was made. Vexstar suddenly gripped his head with both hands. These feelings, they're not mine. I can sense her emotions, her thoughts. This is not possible. Amy felt a similar sensation. She could somehow sense Vexstar's confusion and fear, emotions, that seemed completely foreign to what she knew about Zephyrian culture. We need to get them both to the medical bay, Dr. Kelly said urgently. This could be dangerous. But before anyone could move, Elder Moonwhisper from the Altheran delegation glided over to them, the tall silver-skinned being moved with graceful steps, his large eyes filled with ancient wisdom. Dr. Kelly, wait, Elder Moonwhisper said in his musical voice. I believe I know what has happened here. All eyes turned to the elderly Altheran. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their vast knowledge and peaceful nature. If anyone understood strange phenomena, it would be them. Long ago, before most species developed advanced technology, all sentient beings shared certain neurological pathways, Elder Moonwhisper explained. These connections allowed for empathic communication and emotional sharing. That's impossible, said a Corellian diplomat who had moved closer to listen. No species has those abilities. Most species evolved away from them, Elder Moonwhisper continued. We considered such connections primitive and unnecessary, but perhaps humans retained these ancient pathways. Dr. Kelly looked at his scanner readings again with new understanding. That would explain the unusual brain activity. Amy's touch somehow activated dormant neural networks in Vexstar's mind. Vexstar was struggling to process everything he was experiencing. For his entire life, he had known only the simple emotions of his warrior culture: anger, pride, honor, and conquest. Now he was feeling things that Zephyrian language had no words for. He could sense Amy's fear, but also her desire to help rather than harm. He felt her confusion, but underneath it was something warm and caring that made no sense to his military mindset. Most disturbing of all, he could feel her pain from where his claws had hurt her, and it bothered him in a way that violated everything he had been taught about strength and dominance. Make it stop, Vexstar said, his voice barely above a whisper. These feelings are making me weak. They're not making you weak, Amy said gently. They're making you complete. The word hit Vexstar like a physical blow. Complete. He had always believed that warriors were already complete through strength and victory. But now he could sense emotions and thoughts that showed him how limited his previous understanding had been. Other aliens in the ballroom began to approach, curious about what was happening. Word was already spreading through the ship's communication system about the strange incident between the human and the Zephyrian warrior. Captain Ron Hayes, the ship's commanding officer, pushed through the crowd with several security guards. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes, experienced in handling diplomatic crises. "What's the situation here?" Captain Hayes asked, looking between the humans and Vexstar. "Medical emergency, sir," Dr. Kelly reported. "We need to get both patients to the medical bay for observation." "No," Vexstar said suddenly, his voice stronger. "I will not show weakness in front of other species." "This isn't about weakness," Amy said, and somehow Vexstar could feel the truth in her words through their strange connection. "This is about understanding." Jake noticed that other aliens were now staring at them with various expressions. Some looked frightened, others curious, and a few seemed almost hungry for something they couldn't name. "We need to leave," Jake said quietly to Ambassador Carter. "This is getting too much attention." But as they started to move toward the exit, more aliens began to approach. A blue-skinned Novarian reached out tentatively toward Amy's hand. Two Corellians moved closer, their cat-like eyes fixed on her with intense interest. "Everyone stay back," Jake ordered, positioning himself protectively near Amy. "Give them space." Dr. Kelly was rapidly taking readings from his scanner, trying to understand what was happening. "The neurochemical levels are still extremely high," he reported. "And it's not just affecting Amy and Vexstar anymore. Indeed, several aliens near Amy were beginning to show signs of unusual behavior. The Novarian who had almost touched her was breathing heavily, his three eyes dilated. The Corellians were making soft purring sounds that their species only made during moments of deep contentment. "It's spreading," Elder Moonwhisper observed with fascination. "The human's presence is affecting multiple species simultaneously." Vexstar suddenly stepped closer to Amy, but this time his movement was protective rather than threatening. Through their connection he could sense the growing crowd's intentions, and some of them felt dangerous. "They want what I experienced," he said grimly. "They can smell the change in me, and they want it for themselves." Amy looked around at the gathering crowd with growing alarm. What had started as a diplomatic incident was becoming something much more complex and potentially dangerous. "We need to go," she said. "Now," Captain Hayes nodded and signaled his security team. "Clear a path to the medical bay. No one touches the human civilians." As they began to move through the crowd, Vexstar walked beside Amy instead of behind her. For the first time in his life, the mighty Zephyrian warrior was more concerned with protecting someone else than with maintaining his own dominance. The connection between them had awakened something in both their species, and neither fully understood what it might mean for the future of galactic civilization. Behind them, the ballroom erupted in excited conversations as aliens from 12 worlds tried to understand what they had witnessed. Some called it contamination, others called it evolution, but all agreed that something fundamental had changed. The age of simple, diplomatic relations between humans and other species was over. Something far more complex and potentially dangerous had begun. The news traveled fast through the ship's communication system. Within an hour, every being on the Stellar Harmony had heard about the strange incident between the human woman and the Zephyrian warrior. The story spread even faster through the galactic news networks, reaching 12 different star systems before midnight. Amy sat in the medical bay, connected to several monitoring devices that beeped softly around her. Dr. Kelly moved between her bed and another where Vexstar lay, comparing readings on his portable scanner. The massive Zephyrian warrior looked uncomfortable on the small medical bed, but he had not complained once since arriving. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Kelly asked Amy as he checked her vital signs. "Strange," Amy admitted. "I keep getting flashes of something, emotions that aren't mine." Images of places I've never seen. Vexstar shifted on his bed. I see her memories. Sometimes peaceful places with green grass and blue skies. Such things seem impossible, but I know they are real. Jake stood guard near the door, watching the corridor outside. More and more aliens had been gathering near the medical bay, trying to get closer to Amy. Some claimed they needed medical attention, but Jake could see the real hunger in their eyes. "Dr. Kelly," Jake said quietly, "we have a problem. Half the ship wants to get near Amy, and the other half wants to lock her up as a dangerous weapon." Ambassador Carter entered the medical bay with Captain Hayes. Both looked worried and tired. They had spent the last several hours dealing with angry communications from various alien governments. "The situation is getting worse," Ambassador Carter reported. "The Corellian Trade Union is demanding that all humans be quarantined until we can prove we're not carrying some kind of mind control virus." "That's ridiculous," Amy said, sitting up in her bed. "I'm not controlling anyone's mind." "Try telling that to the Zephyrian High Command," Captain Hayes said grimly. "They're calling for Vexstar to be executed for bringing shame to their species." Vexstar's yellow eyes flashed with anger, but it was different from his old rage. Now, his anger was mixed with sadness and fear, emotions that no Zephyrian was supposed to feel. "My people do not understand," Vexstar said slowly. "They think I have become weak, but I have become ... Door." Dr. Kelly had been studying his scanner readings for hours, and he was beginning to understand the scope of what had happened. "Captain, I think we're dealing with something that's never been documented before. Amy's touch didn't just affect Vexstar. It seems to have awakened neurological pathways that have been dormant in his species for thousands of years." "What does that mean in simple terms?" Jake asked. "It means that humans might have the ability to unlock empathy in other species," Dr. Kelly explained, "to help them feel emotions that their evolution or culture has suppressed." Elder Moonwhisper appeared in the doorway, his silver form moving gracefully into the room. Several other aliens followed him, including the blue-skinned Novarian and two of the cat-like Corellians who had been present at the incident. "Dr. Kelly speaks truth," Elder Moonwhisper said in his musical voice. "I have spent hours researching our ancient records. Long ago, before technology separated us, all species shared emotional connections. Most of us chose to evolve away from such bonds, believing them primitive. But humans kept them?" Amy asked. "More than kept them," Elder Moonwhisper replied. "You developed them, enhanced them, made them stronger through your difficult evolution on a dangerous world." The Novarian stepped forward, his three eyes focused intently on Amy. "Please," he said in broken common language, "I need to understand what the warrior felt. My people, we have not felt ... Doi ... in many generations." "It's not safe," Jake said, moving to block the alien's approach. "We don't know what the long-term effects might be." But Amy was already standing up, ignoring the monitoring wires attached to her arms. "Maybe it's not about safety," she said. "Maybe it's about what we're supposed to become." Vexstar watched her with his new understanding. Through their connection, he could feel her desire to help, even though she was afraid. This selfless concern for others was completely foreign to Zephyrian thinking, but it felt right to him in ways he couldn't explain. "The human speaks wisdom," Vexstar said, surprising. "Everyone. I was a warrior who knew only conquest. Now I understand that true strength might come from connection rather than domination." Captain Hayes shook his head. "I can't allow unauthorized contact. We need to understand this phenomenon before we risk exposing more beings to it." "Sir," a voice called from the corridor. Lieutenant Sam Parker, one of the ship's communication officers, hurried into the medical bay. "We're receiving urgent messages from multiple governments. The Altheran Council wants to establish formal research protocols. The Zephyrian Empire is demanding immediate return of their warrior. And Earth Command? They want us to surrender." Amy, to prevent an interstellar war, the room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications of Earth Command's order. If Amy was turned over to hostile alien forces, she would likely be executed or used as a test subject. I won't let that happen, Jake said firmly. None of us will, Vexstar added, his voice carrying the authority of a military commander. The human is under my protection now. Ambassador Carter looked surprised. Vexstar, your own people want you executed. Why would you protect a human? Because she showed me that my people are wrong, Vexstar replied. Strength without compassion is not strength at all. It is weakness disguised as power. Dr. Kelly had been quietly taking readings from the other aliens in the room. His scanner showed interesting results. Captain, the effects are spreading even without direct contact. Just being near Amy for extended periods seems to be affecting the emotional centers of multiple species. Indeed, the Novarian was displaying behavior his species hadn't shown in recorded history. Instead of the usual cold efficiency, he was demonstrating something that looked like genuine concern for Amy's well-being. The Corellians were purring softly, a sound they typically made only in private moments of contentment. This is not contamination, Elder Moonwhisper observed. This is awakening. The human is helping us remember what we chose to forget. Amy felt overwhelmed by the responsibility she hadn't asked for. Through her connection with Vexstar, she could sense his determination to protect her, but she also felt the weight of his people's expectations and anger. What if I don't want this? She asked quietly. What if I just want to go home and live a normal life? You cannot, Vexstar said gently. Just as I cannot return to being only a warrior. We have been changed, and that change has meaning beyond ourselves. Lieutenant Parker spoke up again. Sir, there's more. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching our position. Zephyrian war vessels, Corellian trade ships, and something else, something big. Captain Hayes moved to the communication panel. Hayes to bridge, report. Captain, came the reply. We have 15 alien vessels converging on our location. They'll be here within 6 hours. Jake checked his weapon and moved closer to Amy. They're not coming for trade negotiations. Some want to study the human, Elder Moonwhisper said sadly. Others want to destroy her. And a few want to use her abilities as a weapon. Amy looked around the room at the beings who had become her unlikely protectors. A human security officer who had sworn to defend her. A Zephyrian warrior who had discovered compassion. An ancient Altheran who remembered forgotten truths. A doctor who saw scientific wonder instead of threat. Then we need to be ready for them, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Vexstar stood up from his medical bed, his full height making him tower over everyone else in the room, but his posture was different now, protective rather than threatening. The human is right, he said. We must prepare for war. But this time we fight not for conquest, but for the right to grow beyond what we have always been. Outside the medical bay, more aliens gathered in the corridors. Some came seeking the transformative touch they had heard about. Others came to demand that the dangerous human be contained. All of them were drawn by something they couldn't quite name, the possibility of becoming more than their species had ever allowed them to be. The galaxy was about to change, and Amy Brooks found herself at the center of a transformation that would affect billions of lives across the stars. The ships arrived exactly when predicted. Through the observation windows of the Stellar Harmony, Jake could see the war fleet taking positions around them. 12 Zephyrian battleships formed a threatening circle, their weapons pointed at the luxury liner. Behind them came smaller vessels from other species, each with their own agenda. The largest ship was the Zephyrian flagship Blood Thunder. Its dark metal hull bristled with cannons and missile ports. On its bridge stood Korath Stormwind, Vexstar's younger brother and political rival. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the Stellar Harmony, surrounded by his nervous crew. The communication screen flickered to life, showing Korath's scarred face. Unlike his brother, Korath had never shown any emotion except cold anger and ambition. I am Korath Stormwind of the Blood Thunder clan, the younger Zephyrian announced. I demand the immediate surrender of the humans who have contaminated my brother. This is neutral space, Captain Hayes replied calmly. You have no authority here, Korath's yellow eyes narrowed. My brother has been infected with alien weakness. According to Zephyrian law, those responsible must face judgment through ritual combat. Down in the medical bay, Amy felt her stomach drop as she heard the transmission through the ship's speakers. Vexstar stood beside her bed, his massive frame tense with worry and anger. "He wants to kill you," Vexstar said simply. "My brother sees your influence on me as a disease that must be cured." "What exactly is ritual combat?" Amy asked, though she suspected she wouldn't like the answer. "A fight to the death," Vexstar explained. "The winner proves they are right. The loser dies along with anyone they were protecting." Jake checked his weapons for the third time in an hour. "Then we don't let it happen. We find another way." Ambassador Carter burst into the medical bay, her face pale with stress. "The situation is getting worse. Korath is demanding that Jake fight him as Amy's protector. If Jake loses, all humans on this ship will be executed as accomplices." "That's barbaric," Dr. Kelly said, looking up from his research. "Surely the other species won't allow it." "The Galactic Council recognizes traditional combat laws," Ambassador Carter replied sadly. "And several species are backing Korath's demand. They want this problem to disappear before it spreads to their own people." Amy stood up quickly, pulling the monitoring wires from her arms. "No, I won't let Jake die for me. If anyone's going to fight, it should be me." The room erupted in protests. Jake stepped forward, his expression determined. "Amy, you can't. You're not trained for combat, and Korath is a professional killer." "Neither are you," Amy pointed out. "You're security, not a warrior." Vexstar had been quiet during the argument, but now he spoke with authority. "There is another way. I can fight my brother myself." "You said he wants to execute you for being contaminated," Amy reminded him. "Yes," Vexstar agreed. "But if I win, Zephyrian law says he must accept that my change is not weakness, but strength. My people will have to reconsider their understanding of what makes a true warrior." Through their strange connection, Amy could feel Vexstar's determination mixed with deep sadness. He was willing to fight his own brother to protect her and everything they had discovered together. "There's something else," Dr. Kelly said, looking at his latest research. "I've been studying the historical records that Elder Moonwhisper provided. This has happened before, but the incidents were covered up or dismissed." He showed them his computer screen, filled with ancient reports and medical data. "Over the past 1,000 years, there have been dozens of cases where contact with humans caused unexpected behavioral changes in other species. The government buried the information." "Why?" Ambassador Carter asked. "Because they were afraid," Elder Moonwhisper said as he entered the medical bay. "Afraid that if their people learned about emotional growth, they would demand changes to their societies." Amy felt a new weight of responsibility. This wasn't just about her or even about humans. This was about the future evolution of consciousness across the galaxy. The ship's communication system crackled to life again. Korath's voice filled the room with cold authority. "I give you 1 hour to produce a champion. If no one accepts my challenge, I will board your ship and take the humans by force." Captain Hayes's voice came over the speakers. "All human personnel, report to designated safe areas. This is not a drill." Jake started toward the door. "I'm going to accept the challenge." "No," Amy said firmly. "I started this and I'll finish." You cannot," Vexstar said. "Zephyrian law does not recognize female combatants." "Then maybe it's time to change Zephyrian law," Amy replied. She walked to the communication panel and pressed the broadcast button. Her voice carried throughout both ships as she spoke. "Korath Stormwind, this is Amy Brooks. I accept your challenge of ritual combat." The response was immediate and angry. "Impossible. Females do not fight. Send your male protector." "I am my own protector," Amy said calmly. "If you're afraid to fight a human female, you can withdraw your challenge and leave in peace." The insult hit its mark. Through the speakers, they could hear angry Zephyrian voices arguing in their native language. No warrior could refuse a direct challenge to their courage, even from a species they considered inferior. "Very well," Korath finally replied, his voice full of rage. "But when I kill you, the contamination dies with you." And your protectors will follow you into death. Jake grabbed Amy's arm. This is insane. You can't fight a trained Zephyrian warrior. Maybe not, Amy agreed, but I can try something they've never seen before. She looked at Vexstar, and through their connection, she could feel his understanding. He knew what she was planning, and despite his fear for her safety, he recognized the wisdom in her strategy. Teach me, Amy said to Vexstar. Show me how Zephyrians fight. In 1 hour? Dr. Kelly protested. It's impossible. Not the way humans usually learn, Vexstar said slowly. But through our connection, I can share my knowledge directly with her mind. Amy sat down facing Vexstar, taking his clawed hands in her smaller ones. The moment they touched, information began flowing between them. Amy saw decades of combat training, military strategy, and warrior philosophy through Vexstar's memories, but she also shared her own knowledge with him. Her understanding of human adaptability, creativity, and the emotional strength that came from protecting others rather than dominating them. The exchange lasted 30 minutes, leaving both of them exhausted but changed. Amy now carried the combat knowledge of a Zephyrian master warrior, while Vexstar understood human concepts of sacrifice and love that his species had never developed. It's time, Captain Hayes announced over the speakers. The combat will take place in Cargo Bay 7. All species representatives will witness the fight according to galactic law. As they prepared to leave the medical bay, Amy felt strangely calm. Through Vexstar's memories, she understood that this fight was about more than just survival. It was about proving that growth and change were not weaknesses to be feared, but strengths to be embraced. Jake walked beside her, his hand ready on his weapon. I'll be watching from the audience. If anything goes wrong, ... Nothing will go wrong, Amy said with more confidence than she felt. This is what needs to happen. Vexstar followed them toward the cargo bay, his yellow eyes filled with emotions his species had no names for. Through their connection, he shared his strength with her, while she shared her courage with him. Behind them, Dr. Kelly gathered his medical equipment, preparing for whatever outcome the next hour would bring. The future of human-alien relations was about to be decided by a fight between a small human woman and a warrior bred for conquest. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see which vision of the future would survive. Cargo Bay 7 had been transformed into a fighting arena. The ship's crew had moved all the cargo containers to create a large open space. Bright lights hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows on the metal floor. Representatives from 12 different species stood around the edges, watching with intense interest. Amy walked into the center of the arena wearing simple combat gear that the ship's security team had found for her. The clothes felt strange and heavy, but through her connection with Vexstar, she understood how each piece of equipment worked. Korath Stormwind entered from the opposite side, and Amy was shocked by his size. He was even larger than his brother, with more scars covering his green-scaled skin. His claws had been sharpened to razor points, and his yellow eyes showed no emotion except cold determination to kill. Captain Hayes stood at one edge of the arena, reading from a tablet containing the official rules of Zephyrian ritual combat. This fight will continue until one participant surrenders or dies. No weapons are allowed except natural abilities. No outside interference is permitted. Jake stood with the other humans, his hands clenched into fists. Through the crowd, he could see Ambassador Carter looking pale and worried. Dr. Kelly held his medical scanner, ready to rush in the moment the fight ended. Elder Moonwhisper stood with the Altheran delegation, his ancient eyes watching with deep interest. Several other aliens had positioned themselves strategically, some hoping to see Amy win, others waiting for her defeat. Vexstar stood alone near the Zephyrian section, separated from his own people but unwelcome with the others. Through their connection, Amy could feel his presence like a warm hand on her shoulder, sharing strength and knowledge. Are both fighters ready? Captain Hayes asked. Korath cracked his knuckles, producing a sound like breaking bones. I am ready to cleanse this contamination from the galaxy. Amy took a deep breath, centering herself the way Vexstar's memories had taught her. I'm ready. Begin. Korath moved faster than Amy had expected, even with Vexstar's combat knowledge. The huge warrior crossed the arena in 3 quick steps, his claws aimed at her throat. Amy barely managed to dodge to the side. Feeling the wind from his attack brush past her face, she rolled away and came up in a defensive position, using techniques that felt both foreign and familiar. Vexstar's training had become part of her muscle memory, but her human instincts kept trying to interfere. Korath spun around with surprising grace for such a large being. "You move well for prey," he snarled. "But you cannot run forever." He attacked again, this time with a series of claw strikes that Amy had to block with her armored sleeves. Each impact sent shockwaves up her arms, and she realized that her smaller size would become a serious disadvantage in a prolonged fight. But Amy had advantages that Korath didn't expect. Her human flexibility allowed her to bend and twist in ways that surprised the rigid Zephyrian fighting style. When he expected her to retreat, she moved forward. When he anticipated aggression, she used defensive maneuvers. The fight continued for several minutes, with Amy staying barely ahead of Korath's attacks. She managed to land a few strikes of her own, but they seemed to have little effect on his heavily muscled frame. "You fight better than expected," Korath admitted, breathing heavily. "But this ends now." He lunged forward with both clawed hands extended, trying to grab Amy and end the fight with crushing strength. Amy saw the attack coming through Vexstar's tactical knowledge, but instead of dodging, she did something that shocked everyone watching. She stepped directly into Korath's grasp, allowing his claws to close around her throat. The moment his claws touched her skin, Korath's expression changed from confidence to confusion. The same neurochemical reaction that had affected Vexstar began flooding Korath's system, but this time Amy was prepared for it, through the physical contact she shared. Not just her emotions, but her memories and experiences. Korath felt her fear, but also her determination to protect others. He experienced her love for her friends and family, concepts that Zephyrian culture had never developed, most overwhelming of all. He felt her compassion for him, even as he tried to kill her. The idea that someone could care about the well-being of their enemy was so alien to his mindset that it caused his entire worldview to collapse. Korath released Amy and staggered backward, his yellow eyes wide with shock and confusion. What are you doing to me?" "I'm showing you what you could become," Amy said gently, rubbing her throat where his claws had left marks. "What your whole species could become." The alien audience watched in stunned silence as the mighty Zephyrian warrior dropped to his knees. Tears began flowing from his eyes, something that no Zephyrian had ever done in public. "I can feel your pain," Korath whispered. "All the beings I have killed, all the worlds I have conquered, I can feel their suffering as if it were my own." Vexstar stepped forward from the crowd, ignoring the protests from the Zephyrian delegation. He knelt beside his brother, placing a clawed hand on Korath's shoulder. "The pain is real," Vexstar said quietly. "But so is the possibility of redemption. We can choose to be more than we were." Amy approached the two brothers carefully. "The fight is over. According to your laws, I won when you released me voluntarily." Korath looked up at her with eyes that now held depth and understanding instead of cold anger. "You did not win through strength. You won through something we have." "No word for love," Amy said simply. "Compassion. A strength that comes from connecting with others instead of dominating them." Dr. Kelly rushed into the arena with his medical scanner, taking readings from all 3 participants. "Remarkable," he said. "Korath is showing the same neural changes that we saw in Vexstar, but accelerated." Elder Moonwhisper glided into the arena, his musical voice carrying to every corner of the bay. "Witness what we have seen here today. This human has not weakened these warriors. She has awakened abilities that our species abandoned long ago." The alien representatives began talking among themselves in excited voices. Some still looked fearful, but many appeared fascinated by the transformation they had witnessed. Captain Hayes stepped forward. "According to Zephyrian law, Amy Brooks has won this combat. The challenge is complete." "No," Korath said, struggling to his feet. The challenge revealed a greater truth. These humans do not carry a disease. They carry the cure for what we have become. He turned to address the Zephyrian delegation, his voice carrying the authority of his military rank. I withdraw all demands for human surrender. Instead, I formally request that my people begin cultural exchange programs to learn from human emotional development. The other alien representatives began making similar declarations. The Corellians wanted to establish research partnerships. The Altherans offered to share their ancient records about empathic evolution. Even the usually suspicious Novarians expressed interest in careful contact studies. Ambassador Carter approached Amy with tears in her eyes. You just changed the course of galactic history. Amy felt overwhelmed by the weight of what had happened. Through her connections with both Zephyrian brothers, she could sense their commitment to helping their species evolve beyond pure aggression. I didn't do this alone, Amy said. It took all of us working together. Jake finally relaxed his combat stance, though he stayed close to Amy. So what happens now? Dr. Kelly looked at his scanner readings with excitement. Now we begin the real work. We need to establish protocols for safe human-alien empathic contact. We need to study the long-term effects. And we need to help other species understand that this isn't about humans controlling them, but about all of us growing together. Elder Moonwhisper nodded approvingly. The human speaks wisdom. This is not the end of our story, but the beginning of a new chapter for all sentient life. As the various delegations began making plans for cooperation instead of conflict, Amy realized that her accidental touch of an angry warrior had started something that would reshape galactic civilization. Vextar and Korith stood together. 2. Brothers reunited by their shared transformation. Through her connection with them, Amy could feel their determination to bring positive change to their entire species. The age of pure military dominance was ending. The age of empathic evolution had begun, and humanity had shown the galaxy that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to understand and connect with others. The stars themselves seemed brighter as the ships began, departing for their homeworlds, carrying news of humanity's gift to civilizations across the galaxy.